It's a fabulous day. I mean, it's like the quilt show just makes the whole town come alive. Well, 25 years ago, a friend of mine, Kathy Howell, and I decided to have kind of a craft fair quilt show. And I hung 12 quilts that belonged to my family and to myself, and tried to get some of the local ladies to hang their quilts, and they didn't think theirs were good enough. Well, once they saw the quilts up, they went home and got their quilts, so the quilt show started growing from the very first time. It was interesting, you know, you start with 12, and, you know, the next year you have 25, and you think it's a really big show, and over the years, it's progressed to the point that we have, you know, close to 1,000 quilts every year. Well, this year we're going to be hanging close to 900 quilts, and so we have to have some sort of a system.
We refold the quilts when they arrive. We fold them so that the right-hand side of the outside of the quilt is on top. This is our identification form. This is why these forms are so important, because this becomes the identification for the quilt, with this information showing so that Jean and her crew can see it.
And this is Candle Factory Zone 3. What we have done is taken the town and divided it into sections. And then within each section, we've taken a photograph of the building. And then down below, we write if we can hang a medium quilt there or a large quilt. So we know what kind of slots we have to fill. And then we make up these little tags that are adhesive that go on the bottom of the quilt show forms. So once I write down a name here, then I take one of these tags and put it on the quilt. I think we'll stick this blue quilt. Try to kind of coordinate things so that they look good together. And we've got some blues and reds and kind of earth tones. So now I'm going to have Barbara go ahead and start processing. And we have to write down the name of the person. And people give their quilts titles, so we put the title of the quilt, and we put the little sticker on. Then, once we have these processed, then Joyce is putting it in the computer. And that way we can have a computer printout on Quilt Show Day in case someone comes and says, oh, I can't find my quilt anyplace. We'll have a booklet that has a computer printout that tells where their quilt is.
I'm talking about the honey-do list that my wife gives me. She tells me they're manly things that I must do to help the show.
The most difficult thing is people do not read and pay attention to the due dates and things of that sort in the brochure. So it boils down to a four-letter word, R-E-A-D.
What kind of stitch do you use in your quilts?
A fast stitch.
Well, since this year our Quilters Affair ended up being during the 4th of July, we really wanted to come up with some kind of a celebration. And Joyce Boyd, who works for me, came up with the idea of an old-fashioned picnic. And they came up with games, and we have a fiddler playing, and we have displays of antique quilts.
This is called threadwork. It originally became popular in the late 1800s, came over from England, was first brought to the United States around 1890. A lot of them were called penny quilts because they would sell the muslin squares with a pattern on them, and then for a penny a piece the ladies could obtain one, take it home and embroider on it, and then come back usually with their egg money and have a quilt by the end of the season. In the 40s, they came out with all the synthetic dyes, and that's where we came up with the notion that red runs. But the old original red dyes were color fast.
I like to collect anything that's 30s or earlier, and I mostly try to collect ones with really fine hand quilting because I am not a good hand quilter. I'm learning, but I haven't got that mastered. And to find the quilts that women obviously spent hours and hours on is so exciting, and to see their handiwork. Double iris chain, and just these blues were very popular, and they've really held up. The dyes have really held up well. And I guess, again, the quilting is very, very fine. Maybe 12, 14 stitches to an inch, and that's very fine hand quilting. It has a twin sister, and they are identical. Same fabrics, same little center motif. You can see the fabrics are the same, the pinks. And so this woman made them for 2 twin beds, and they're beautiful. I've got about 14, 16 old quilts, and definitely their value is increasing. But I was once told that buy it because you love it, not because you think it's going to increase in value. Buy it because you love it, and that's what I use as my criteria.
I've been quilting about 10 years, but these are quilts that I've collected. This one I bought on the East Coast. It's an Amish quilt, and it was made about 1940. It's the youngest quilt of my collection. In the 1860s, these were very popular. They're called signature quilts, and they were made for people maybe who were going to the West and leaving home. And this one is from New York State. One of the squares says Grandma on it. This one might have been made during the Women Christians Temperance Union. It's called a double T for temperance, and their colors were blue and white. White for purity and blue for water, because they were against drinking. This is a crazy quilt, and they were popular in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And many of them were made of silks and velvets, but most people couldn't afford those, so they made them out of wool scraps. There's about 80 different flowers and vegetables embroidered on this, and it's all made out of wool.
I've been collecting for almost 20 years, but some of them are family quilts that have been in my family since before the Civil War. This was made by my great-great-grandmother, and she started it shortly after the Civil War. It's been in our family all these years, and my mother always called it the Sunday quilt, and it was put on the bed on Sundays. The quilting in it is exquisite. It has some stains now through the years with age. And it's hard to tell in this light. It's all made from a fabric that was called a polished sateen, and it has a satin look to it. You don't ever want to store them in plastic bags. It's better to store them in an old pillowcase in cotton. If you're going to put them in a box, buy acid-free tissue paper and put them in the box. They're better off where they can breathe. I like to collect red, white, and blue, and I'm not so much on the quilting, it's the color I buy for. A very old log cabin, and I love it. I think it's made from old shirts. It's very, very soft. The colors are so soft and muted. It's just a wonderful quilt, and it's a very collectible one because of the colors. I would like most of all is if they could talk to me and tell me who made them. Quilters and would-be quilters. I'm more interested in the would-be because you women are doing the future quilts, and don't ever let anybody tell you you can't do it. You can do it. The only one that can keep you from doing it is yourself. Good morning. Good morning.
what we started doing was having classes the week before the quilt show, because we find that quilters really are workshop-oriented people. They like to learn new ideas, new techniques. So we started out the very first year with 3 teachers, and this year we have 30 instructors.
Like carter hats, you know? I've been a teacher since the get-go. When I didn't know anything, I went to my local church group and said, let me tell you how to make a quilt. I think how far quilt making has come and how far I've come as a teacher. And here at Sisters, I got to start with beginners. I couldn't believe it. It was so much fun. And some advanced quilters. I just love seeing people grow in their own quilt making experience. This is her very first quilt, made at Sisters.
And I finished it.
Yeah, yay! We finish things here, don't we?
This is beginning quilting. It's a 2-day class, and they're going to learn how to rotary cut, how to fold, how to do everything they need to do. By the time they finish this class, they'll know if they like quilting, if they don't, and they'll know how to make almost any block out there, and it'll give them a real good foundation for what they're doing.
Now, you don't look like a beginner quilter.
No, I've quilted for many, many years.
So what are you doing in this class?
Just having fun. This is a fun time.
It's like you know what you're doing with the ironing.
But I'm good at ironing. I don't know about that sewing machine.
Well, probably more sophisticated than me. Uh-oh. I screwed up. Oh, well. This is a mystery quilt. And Lori won't tell us the design until we get it all done.
The thing, you know, you cut all the fabric up and you don't know what you're making.
I like the suspense of not knowing what you're making.
I am trying to design a duck that looks like a duck.
This is Ducks in a Row, and it's just kind of organizing one's life, but we never get organized.
I'm the queen of sit and stitch, yes. I can sit and I can stitch.
Here today I'm teaching the double basket class. To use an accurate 1/4-inch seam allowance, do accurate cutting, and you can make anything, piece anything together.
So do your top one from left to right.
This is machine quilting feathers, mastering feathers it's called, and we're drawing feathers right now, and then we're going to start working on the sewing machine.
This is offset pineapple. We're fussy cutting the corners so that we can have a design that repeats 4 times. But we're cutting our fabric into Swiss cheese to find the exact repeat on our pattern. And we can play with this guy.
It looks like a kaleidoscope.
It is. Here's a 6-point. Here's an 8-point. You can see the stars that are forming in there. Quilting is something that women have found to be very special. It's a bonding and a friendship that most of us older women have let our daughters have, and then we found it a little bit later than our daughters have, and it's very special.
Well, 25 years ago, quilting was a lot different than it is today. And, you know, I think about my first quilt I made 30 years ago, and nobody was quilting much to speak of. And I was getting ready to have my first child and wanted to make a quilt for Jason. So I kind of taught myself. And now, with so many people quilting and the popularity of it, I really think the whole process has evolved. And there's a lot of people who've gotten involved that are finding it as an artistic expression.
We're doing fusible applique and decorative stitching. So this is the second day, so we've got lots of wonderful original blocks going on, and people are starting to do some decorative stitching.
Oh yeah, I've got quite the mess going, but this is really fun. Really fun.
It's just a fusible quilt, and that's the ladybug.
It pulls up all the creativity I have in me. I can be as free as I want to be when I choose colors and patterns, and I never know what it's going to look like, but the more I practice, the more I have a sense of where it's going anyway.
Well, what I do is I teach people how to be creative. because everyone is creative, they just don't know it.
Why is it called apparent magnitude?
It has something to do with space and stars, and I'm not for sure the whole what it is, but
All quilters are artists.
I think there's a great diversity within the art itself, although a lot of people don't consider it art. I think there's more and more people my age and younger that are starting to quilt, which I think is very important, and they're bringing a whole new eye and a whole fresh look. So from traditional, and a lot of them are still traditional, but from the traditional blocks you can make very contemporary quilts, and I think you're getting a lot of contemporary aspects coming out of the younger people, and I think that it's nice because you get a good variety. You have, no one can ever get bored with quilting or with looking at quilts. There's just so many things that people come up with all the time. People really are expressing themselves in amazing feats with fabric and threads and textiles in general. I think it's really come a long ways, especially in the last 10 years.
How'd you get into quilting?
Actually, I started about 12, 13 years ago with my mom. She decided that she wanted to do a mother-daughter bonding thing and just took off from there. So.
I have 4 daughters and myself, and we all sew, and we have a whole closet full of fabric.
How long have you been quilting?
About 55 years.
Really, that long?
Yeah. Well, I was an asthmatic as a child, and they didn't let you run and play in their 30s, and so I learned to quilt.
Well, you know, when it comes to quilting, you'll see a variety of people. There's like no social barriers. All kinds of people participate together, and it's like when they have quilting in common, that's the common bond.
We have a lot of ladies coming from all different parts of the world. Vancouver, Washington.
St. Louis, California.
From Nebraska.
We're sisters and sisters.
From Moscow, Idaho.
Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
From Bozeman, Montana.
I'm from Dallas, Texas.
Glover Bay, BC.
Where?
I'm from Arvada, Colorado.
I'm from Hinsdale, Illinois.
There are 8 of us out here from the western suburbs of Chicago.
Jan Hearn from San Diego, California.
Jill Swiggle, Beaverton, Oregon.
Susie Hines from Portland, Oregon.
Chris Timmons from Grafton, Australia.
Linda Lancaster from Summerland, British Columbia.
Di Burgess from Chittaway Point, New South Wales, Australia.
Linda Catlin, Lake Oswego.
I'm the banker of the group.
And then I have Alaska, Arizona, North Carolina. When you name it, we have it.
I love it.
It's heaven. When you die, you're going to go to sisters, I'm sure.
Crawl under my dream quilt, a little blanket that I built with a needle and thread, yellow, blue, and red. It's my dream quilt. Crawl into my dream. Together we can make a perfect scene. A lot of stars on my block. Come on and go for a walk in my dream. Come on, let's walk down. We'll take a drunkard's path to a lady of the lake. Send a New York beauty on a wild goose chase. Watch that streak of lightning hit the cabin in the pines. The bear paw, the goose track, the 4-patch and the 9s in my dream. A place where you can let your colors scream on your little machines. Purple, orange, and greens in my dream.
Well, I've been doing the poster for the Quilt Show for 9 years, and Jean's become a good friend. And she asked me if I could think of something to try and make the 25th anniversary special. And I thought, I'll think about it. And so as I thought about previous quilt shows that I'd been to, I couldn't help but think about all the women. There's a lot of resource right there, and what could we have all these ladies do to participate and do something together to celebrate the 25th anniversary? I love to see a woman with a hammer. I started doodling, coming up with ideas, and trying to count up the squares and figure out how to get a rectangle with about 1,000 squares, and then I realized, it doesn't come out even to 1,000. And so I decided to go less than 1,000 rather than more. And the design I was working on turned out to have 891.
891 ladies are going to be standing on the field holding a 3-foot square piece of fabric. in the
Demonstrate how
air.
you're going to hold it.
This is how we're going to be holding it. And up in the sky, they're going to be taking a picture down onto the quilt.
So wait,
The human quilt.
Pretty close to what we ended up making. Each one of these little squares is 3 feet.
you think we're going to be able to pull it off?
Absolutely.
I have no doubt.
That's it. So this was the completed sketch, and then I went to my typesetter, Sally Sunston, who created it on the computer for us so that we could tighten it up and get a much better look at how these things would be cut and pieced. And then we realized each one of these squares needed a number, so she added a numbering system. So then we needed fabric, which was a lot of fabric, almost 1,000 yards, I guess. And so Jean knew several people in the industry, and she mentioned it, and a company called Quilters Only just jumped at the chance to be involved, and they donated all the fabric. Then a team of ladies was assembled to sew the pieces that needed to be stitched and assemble the pieces and staple them to the sticks. Then there was a day of sorting them and numbering them so they would correspond with the chart that we had made.
Check here.
So we'll start with this row. When we get that all laid out, I'll go down and mark them all, then I'll roll them up and stick them in a box. And the label.
Here they are. They're here. They're right here.
This is row A. That was a pretty large job. In order to make this thing come off, we had to have it laid out on the grass, this big grid. And then I happened to run into a local surveyor, Fred Ost, and I kind of timidly ran this idea by him, and he just responded. He says, "Sure, that sounds like fun. Let's do it."
That will hopefully provide for a geometric solution for the quilt.
I don't think we could have done it without that. That was really an essential part of it. Well, we realized we wanted to get a good videotape of the quilt, and we thought about a helicopter or an airplane and wrestled with that idea for a while, and then it dawned on us we have folks in town that own a movie crane business, and they do movies all over the world, and they just happen to have a new crane in town at that time that we needed it, and we asked them, and they said, "Sure, we'd love to try it out and show people what we do and be part of the community." So we got the ultimate way to photograph it. Once you get a shot of the whole quilt put together from above, and we know that it's good and it's done and everything's correct, then we're going to give a cue and have everyone walk away. That way, that way, that way, keeping their fabric over their head, maybe like moving a little, and just keep walking and walking until everybody's off the field, out of the shot, and then we just have the grass. Then we'll have lots of fun playing it backwards. The sticks without numbers are the companion sticks to the sticks with numbers. There are 2 sticks. When they open it up, it'll be like this. That was a very good point.
How you doing, Brent?
16.
Find your spot. Just follow the dots. You could be in any row and you're among friends. Look at your number. Find your place. Hey, don't be afraid. Come on down. It's all looking real fine.
I'm amazed at 6 o'clock in the morning at how dedicated these quilters are, and it's going to be neat. It's going to be neat.
Look at your panel. Walk down at you.
You got 20?
So, Greg, you think they're law-abiding citizens here or what?
Oh, absolutely. Phenomenal. Only in Sisters will this happen.
Is this the bus? Okay.
This looks more organized than it is. It really is.
You're in beautiful Sisters.
You bleacher folks, would you mind? Would you
Last but certainly not least.
I'd like to remind you to please not unroll your fabric yet. This has to be done just in the right way in order for this thing to turn out. So please just hang on to it. Look at some video. Isn't that cool? Look at that thing. There's a video camera on the end. That was supplied to us by OPB because we needed a special lens, a wide angle. So I'd like to thank them as well.
That's the front part.
That bleacher over there, so that the crane is on your right. The number that's on your stick will probably be behind you. Crawl under my dream quilt. Get familiar with this thing I've built. I used a needle and thread, yellow, blue, and red. You know what? That's a good question. If someone wants to know, is the pattern right? That is a really good question. Together we can make a perfect scene.
What a great celebration, and this is a tribute to all of the quilters and the people in Sisters that make the Sisters Outdoor Quilt Show possible.
Happy anniversary, 25 years at the Sisters Outdoor Quilt Show.
Woo, you should see this. Wow. It looks just like the drawing. That's cool. It's going up, 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 up. All the stars are, oh, that's amazing. There's coming at you. Woo. Whoa, look at that. That is cool. And a daffodil border is major order in my dream. I wish you could all see this. You will at some point. You will. This is great.
Now you ladies are always used to making quilts. What about being one?
This is our first, and it's wonderful.
Is anybody timing this? Dennis said his record was a minute for holding his arms over his head.
Crawl under my dream quilt. Get familiar with this thing I've built. I used a needle and almost there. Hang on. Yellow, blue, and red in my dream. We gotta get some mountains in. We gotta get some mountains before together we can make. You guys think if we let you rest for a minute, you could do a little bit more? Got lots of stars on my block. Okay, hang on now. We're going up to the mountains. My dream. Come on, let's walk. We'll take a drunken's path to a lady from the lake. We'll send a New York beauty on a wild goose chase. Watch that streak of lightning hit the cabin in the pines. The bear pop, the goose track, the bull bats in. When I say three, then everybody raise them over their heads. And when I say break, everybody flutter them and walk away. And just keep walking and walking and walking until everybody's off the field. Yeah, wave to the camera. It's a human quilt. It talks, it walks, it waves. It's got a life of its own. All right, everybody ready? Are you ready? Okay, let's put them up. Excellent. Get it nice and flat again. Nice and flat. Okay, are we ready? We're going to start fluttering right now. Ooh, yeah, give us some light and start walking away now. Try not to bump into anybody. You don't have to walk in a straight line. Be as crazy as you want. Go in circles, whatever you want, but just keep moving. Just get out of here. Oh, you are beautiful. That's great. Keep going, different directions. Yeah, thank you so much. Then we'll have lots of fun playing in the background. In my dream, fall into this funky little quilt thing, dance around the double wedding ring, wearing checkered bow ties, swatting polka dot shoe flies in my funny little dream. Kick off your covers, it's time time to discover my dream quilt.
What kind of stitches do you use in your quilt?
I pick up the one she dropped.
And we're sisters. We're sisters.
Well, this is a sister's raincoat, Robin and Donna. Do you like it?
Oh, it's very nice.
I know they heard me. Because, you know, it doesn't rain in sisters, so we don't have umbrellas.
I know they're here.
Is that some new fabric you're designing or what?
It's the latest.
This is a new fashion statement. And as you can see, it's a trend. I started a trend.
Oh, please. I'm begging you, man.
Let me see this.
She's cute.
Oh, you like this?
Yes, it's very nice.
It's the latest thing from Gay Parade.
I'd like to welcome you. Those of you who haven't already been to something, I've welcomed you. This is our 25th annual Sisters Outdoor Quilt Show. And we had a fabulous time this morning doing the human quilt. And I actually got to see the tape of it.
Oh, wow.
And I wanted to start out the evening sharing some quilts that were made by my employees. Do it. This is a three-dimensional flowers, and they're all folded. A quilt using Karen Stone's Peace New York Beauty patterns.
What happens today is different than what happens tomorrow and next week and 2 weeks from now. So if you do a story quilt and you put a date and a name and something that you love or someone that you love into it, it'll be different than next year or whenever. It has my grandmother's handkerchief that has L embroidered on it, and quilted into the background is all different kinds of antiques. It just says the best things in life are not things, and I really believe that.
Okay, you're zone one. I'll give a while here and Sally is ready to go out.
I don't have a number. I have a pickup truck. Why don't you go ahead and look? I've got a Suburban over to go over here.
Sorry. Yeah, right. And one more. Okay, let me go up.
There's a wire.
This one.
So, how's it hanging, guys?
The volunteers come at 7, and all the quilts are usually hung by 9:30. There's usually a few things that we have to fine-tune or change, and I would say by 10:30, everything's in place for the whole day.
A real favorite part of the year for me because I love seeing all the quilts. It's a lot of work but I love seeing the end results, and I love seeing what people do and how they create, and how amazing that people come from everywhere and just trops around our little town looking at quilts.
Are you quilters?
Oh, for sure. Yes. For sure we are. Yes.
I would classify my quilts as traditional innovative. I love the old quilts. I think they bring so much to the whole quilting industry. But man, I got to get my hands on that new fabric. All I can say about fabric is that when I go, somebody better come into my sewing room because there's serious money there, but don't tell anyone.
Days of our collecting, we got into the Amish communities and collected some of their antique quilts out in Pennsylvania and Ohio and Indiana. And when we came back actually from a trip to Europe in 1976 during the bicentennial, we had a sponsorship from the Smithsonian to do some lectures and some quilt exhibitions in Europe. When we came back, we decided we didn't want to be on the road anymore, and we were trying to figure out what to do to stay in quilts and live in one place. And we thought, well, how about some of the Amish women that we'd met before, and from whom we collected quilts or bought quilts, if they were to make quilts with our fabric, so we got the kind of colors and patterns that we wanted, that might be a way to get into a business. And so that's how it started, and we now have about 125 women, primarily Amish and primarily in homes in Wayne County, Ohio, which are 100 miles south of Cleveland, who make them. But we send out the fabric and the patterns and the designs and the sizes, and then they make them to our specification. I'm just totally impressed by the cooperation of so many people in this town to make this happen. That's the most amazing thing to me, to have so many people who are part of this. You just get a sense of the energy and the enjoyment that people have of making this happen and making it happen in a quality way.
That is set up here is to enable them to do hand quilting, and you will notice that each of the four ladies is using a needle, and she is quilting in the area directly in front of her. Hand quilting is an old art. It requires a steady hand and good hand-eye coordination, and they do a beautiful job of it.
So these are some of the quilts that were made by students in my class. Joan Metzger, and you can see that not only did she do wonderful piecing, but But look at her quilting. It's just incredible. She kind of followed the outlines of the shapes in the fabric and echoed those shapes. Janet Storton chose to use kind of Southwest colors. She was decorating a house that had these kinds of colors, so that helped her with her palette. And you can see that, you know, they're all the same piecing, but with the different fabrics that you choose, you get a completely different mood. Okay, this one was done by Carol. She applicated the bird and used a lot of free kind of form stitching where the raw edges are still showing. You can see the raw edges in here, and it really creates a textural kind of mood. She did a photo transfer with the seed packets and then is hanging them on the quilt. And she chose all vegetable and garden sort of fabrics. And then it says, plant with hope, grow with love, bloom with joy. And this is Anne Bruchette's. This is for her granddaughter, and they had taken a Hawaiian vacation together. And so what she's done is photo transfers of her little granddaughters, you can see up in the blocks. And then she added some earrings that they bought when they were over there and some beads.
This quilt, when I first saw it, was my favorite. There's something about this quilt. It's very creative. It's very innovative. She took not just elements of the poster, but also interpreted it in her own way. She thought about the fireworks because of 4th of July and our Quilters Affair falling on the 4th of July. She used a variety of mediums, which is also a real contemporary usage in quilting.
To me, this is an incredible quilt. I love how the maker has really taken the colors and made it work throughout the whole quilt. You see the whole color wheel there. And that's not easy to do because you've got to find all the right fabrics. Probably she hand-dyed the fabrics so that she could get all of the gradations that she needed in order to make it flow as well as it does. This is one of Mary Lou Weedman's quilts, and Mary Lou has a great sense of humor, and she just seems to come up with incredible quilts that depict a time in your life or an incident in your life. She has a very whimsical way of approaching quilting, and I think her colors are incredible too, and the way she uses fabrics and puts different fabrics together, the fabrics definitely have personalities, and so each quilt ends up with a real distinct personality. I love this quilt. When it came into the quilt show office, I was just real taken with it. I think it's the way she used green, and you see what happens with the black, how the black really creates some interest and some definition, and the red also. It carries the eye, you know, through the quilt and creates some motion. These are blocks from our quilt block contest that we do each year, and people who want to participate send in $5 for a packet of fabric, and they make a block and submit the block, and then at that point the teachers who are teaching at the Quilters Affair pick their 12 favorite blocks, and we take all of those blocks that got a vote, and we make 3 quilts out of them, each with 12 blocks. So 36 blocks end up being the winners. And Barbara puts together the actual top, so the person that's name gets drawn from those 12 wins a quilt top. This block got the most votes. So Debbie was the one that got the prize for the best block. This is one of the quilt tops that Sue McMahon won when she entered the block contest. This happens to be Mary Lou Weedman's fabric from a fabric line that she did about 3 years ago. Isn't this one cute? With little bolts of fabric.
Our 25th anniversary raffle quilt. It was made by the East of Cascade Quilters. It was designed from a poster that Dennis had done a long time ago, a drawing, Dennis McGregor. And we took and tried to pick similar colors to what he had done, and we made this quilt. And we do this every year to help support the quilt show, since the quilt show is a non-profit organization.
square feet of fabric.
5,000 square feet. Is that enough, you think?
Never. It's
Never enough. Never enough.
Fabric, huh?
Oh, you bet.
I didn't quilt until, I'd say it was about my second year in college, and I wanted to make my friend a baby quilt, and I kind of pieced it together and someone else quilted it for me, and that was about all I wanted to do. And then after we did our second book, I got really interested in being into the textiles. I find a great challenge within designing and using the colors and all of that, and I really enjoy it. And even though black and white is still my passion, black and white photography, I would say that quilting is definitely a close second.
Well, twice a year I teach a sampler class, and in the class it's kind of a progressive learning class where you start out with really simple blocks and you progress to more complex ones. Like this would be a fairly simple one. When you get to something like this, it's a little bit more complicated. But you can see this 4-patch unit is the same as this 4-patch unit, so there's a lot of repeated learning things too. Okay, so each time I make one, I try to pick a different setting. Like in this one, you know, it was white with the blue on either side, and then the corner post was a print. In some of the others, you'll see this one has a very plain setting. It's just all the same fabric, but I did make the stripe always go up and down. And this one to me was kind of like spring. All the colors came across as being very springy. I ended up adding the rabbits and the carrots and the radishes. And I didn't know when I started that's what was going to happen, but as I got some blocks made, the quilt kind of took on a life of its own.
This is the teacher's tent where all of the teachers that were here for Quilters Affair have quilts hanging, and it's a wide variety from some of their pieces that they taught in classes to some of their own personal favorites. I think a lot of quilters definitely expand their horizons and become very creative and very innovative and very contemporary when they're doing it for themselves. A lot of times when you teach classes it doesn't happen as well because it's a little bit hard to teach that. But she is very innovative in her use of color and the way she uses textiles as far as, even if it's not just cotton fabric. And even in the shapes of her quilt, as in this one, and the way that she pulled the color through it. Very contemporary quilting.
Each year, I challenge the employees to make a quilt for a quilt show, and we hang them as a group. And this year, we chose the Through the Garden Gate fabric that was designed by Valerie Wells. And each employee then, her challenge was to use the fabric in a special way in a quilt. And to me, it's just wonderful to see the variety of quilts that you get.
Green grass, green leaves, green shrubs, green trees. They're all kind of different shades of green. And so this kind of ties it together. Every once in a while I have this surprise of a blooming flower. So my quilt is named Welcome to My Blooming Garden.
It reminds me very much of a recent trip I took to England in the Cotswolds, visiting gardens and stuff. And so it's called Dreaming of the Cotswolds.
One of my recent ones that I've made, and the fabrics in it I collected when I was teaching in Europe. So my goal was to try to use those fabrics, and there's some kind of unusual color combinations. So I would focus on just the colors in this block, or just the colors in that block, or this one. Then the challenge was, once the blocks were finished, was to try to find a fabric that would work with all of them. And this fabric just seemed to work. What I do is really audition fabrics and try to find what's going to please the quilt, because in the end, that's what's going to make the quilt really work. One of the things that is very special, I think, about our show is the fact that we don't judge any of the quilts. And I learned a really long time ago that every quilt has something special to say. I think that when you can keep that in mind, you can find something special about every single quilt that you see. They walk in the door and their husbands say, "I drove all the way to Oregon just for this?"
Lots of friendly people here.
That's good.